Please welcome Summit Ministries President, Dr. Jeff Myers.
Have you ever been down to Colorado?
Good morning. One thing, as you know, about Colorado is that we have a handful of towns that are a little more liberal, maybe. I live in one of those towns, Manitou Springs. The New York Times travel reviewer called Manitou Springs a hippie Mayberry. But we've got a program operating there that is changing young lives. Through our 12-day Summit Ministries course, students come from all over the world to have training from world-class instructors in worldviews and apologetics, some of the best minds in the United States of America, preparing them to be godly leaders for a time such as this. Right now, in our program in Tennessee, we have 253 students who are completing the 12-day program, and then on Sunday, we start another group here in Colorado with a record-sized group of 187 students. So there are young leaders coming to the battlefield. Another thing you may know about Colorado is that we have skunks here. I found that out a couple of months ago with a new puppy who got a skunk shot right in the face. It was his first experience with that, and it was my first experience with that. It was late at night, all the stores were closed, there was no chance of getting skunk shampoo from Petco at that hour. So I went down to the local grocery store to see if I could find some things to make up a home remedy, and as I was walking down the aisles, I gathered up cider vinegar and baking soda, and then I went through the pet food aisle just to see if there might be anything there that would be helpful, and then went to the cashier's stand. There were two people in the store working there, two cashiers. One was going to check me out and one 4 cashier aisles away. The one 4 cashier aisles away said to the other one, "Do you smell that?" And the other one said, "I know, it's disgusting." And the other one said, "How on earth did that thing get in here?" Then the cashier turned to me without even looking at all of the purchases, the dog shampoo, the baking soda, the cider vinegar. She looked at me and asked, "Did you smell that skunk? It's especially bad on the pet aisle." And I had to say to her, "I am the skunk." There aren't that many times in my life where I feel completely ostracized, but that was one of them. I knew my very presence at that moment was obnoxious to the other people in the store. And unfortunately, when we look at the challenges between generations today, we need to keep that analogy in mind. Increasingly, those in the millennial generation do not just look at older Americans as being obnoxious, they look at them as being odious to everything that is good. The generational gap when it comes to politics and faith is growing at an unprecedented rate. Let me just give you some examples. The students we have at Summit Ministries, we'll have about 2,000 in our in-person programs this summer, are heading off to universities. Their professors are angrier than ever. And when they're angry, they become bullies, and when they become bullies, they take it out on Christian students like the ones we are sending there. In addition to that, the other students have become quite angry. They are liberal and post-Christian in a way that we haven't seen. Even the children of the 60s were not this liberal or post-Christian as the average young person in this generation. Just to give you a couple of examples, if only the millennial generation had voted in the 2016 election, Donald Trump would have received 23 electoral votes, Hillary Clinton 504. And it's not just in the secular world, it's in the church too. Recently, our organization conducted a study with the prestigious and well-known Barna Research Group, and we found that 8 out of 10 millennials strongly agree somewhat with the statement that the root of society's problems is that the rich exploit the system in order to hurt the poor, which is Marxist ideology. 7 out of 10 say they believe that meaning and purpose come from being one with all that is in the universe. That's a new spiritualist or new age ideology. 6 out of 10 said they believe what is morally right or wrong changes through time, which is a secular ideology. 6 out of 10 say no one can know for sure what meaning there is in the world, which is a postmodern ideology. And 5 out of 10, believe it or not, say they believe in the following statement: the root of society's problem is that people do not obey God, and they should be forced to do so if necessary, which is an Islamic ideology, just like Frank Gaffney was addressing just a few moments ago. This afternoon at 3 o'clock, I'll be doing a breakout session in room 507. And the focus will be winning the hearts and the votes of the millennial generation. I'll share with you how we can see clearly the battle of ideas that rages in our own time, how we can gain credibility with those in the rising generation, and then also 10 ways, 10 strategies to persuade millennials even when their viewpoint is hostile. That's what we'll be talking about in the workshop. But a lot of that comes from a new approach to understanding and grappling with the way ideas are handled in the United States of America. A lot of that, as Jason mentioned, comes from this new book called The Secret Battle of Ideas About God. This book doesn't come out to the public for a week and a half, but we have, I think, 30 or 40 copies here at this conference. If you would like to come, I'll be doing a book signing at 12 o'clock in the exhibit hall. But in that book, I introduce a new way of thinking about ideas. Thinking of ideas as viruses, not just as propositional truths that come into our minds and hearts. It's an important analogy because, you see, a lot of us hold contradictory ideas in our minds and don't even think about it. In our study, 1/3 of church-going Christians said they strongly believe that no one religion is true. Of that 1/3, 2/3 of those people said they also strongly believe that Jesus is the only way to God. Now, how can you hold those two ideas in your mind at the same time without your head exploding? If we understand that ideas don't come into our minds and hearts fully formed, that they come in sort of in the way viruses come into the physical body, it can be really helpful, not only in understanding how ideas work, but also in resisting the bad ideas of our age. So the idea of viruses is really important. You can be infected by a lot of things, and I know this is odd and maybe bizarre and gross to talk about right before lunch. But you can be infected by a fungus, you could be infected by a parasite, you could be infected by a bacteria. All of those things can be killed because they're living organisms. But a virus can't be killed, strictly speaking, because it's not alive to begin with. A virus is a bit of genetic code coated by a protein. They're so small that the smallpox virus, 1 million copies of that virus can fit inside the period at the end of the sentence in the handbook you are looking at right now. These viruses can come into our eyes and our nose and our mouths. They can also come in through cuts so small we don't even realize we have them. And they come into the body, the cells accept them in because they're looking for nutrition. And then the viruses essentially hijack the cell, reproduce themselves, and spread into the body. Deadly viruses like Ebola are even more dangerous. The Ebola virus comes into the body and shuts off the body's alarm system, so it reproduces unnoticed. And then when the body's immune system notices that the virus is there, it attacks with everything it has in what doctors call a cytokine storm. The cytokine storm damages the ability of the virus to reproduce, but it also damages the body. It causes leakage in blood vessels. Then the body's clotting mechanism comes into play to shut those leaks. But by doing that, it shuts off the blood flow to the body's vital organs. Shock looms and death looms. It's not the Ebola virus that kills people. It's the body's response to the Ebola virus that kills people. Now, doctors have found a way to minimize the impact of viruses like Ebola. In fact, when the Ebola virus first came on the scene, 9 out of 10 people who got the virus died. Now, 1 out of 10 die. And it's because doctors do 4 things I believe we can learn from. And that is the heart of the Secret Battle of Ideas About God book. 4 things they do differently. Number 1, they identify the virus. It is important for us to understand that the issues we face today are at root part of a secret battle that is warring in our country over God. If we understand that, then we can understand the different ideas people face, we can recognize them for what they are and know how to respond intelligently to them. The second thing is we've got to isolate what is bad about the viruses. A lot of young adults today are compelled by the Marxist worldview. What's bad about the Marxist worldview is not its concern for the poor. That's a good thing. What's bad about a Marxist worldview is that it is a materialistic view. It says that only the material world exists. There is no heaven, there is no hell, there's no God, there's no Jesus, there's no Holy Spirit, there are no angels, there are no demons. Only the physical world exists. And if only the physical world exists, then everybody should share equally what is here. If one person has more than another person, it's because they've taken more than their fair share. We've heard of the terminology before. The problem, of course, for the Marxist is that all true wealth comes about through our minds, not what is in the mines in the ground. It is our ability to recognize ideas and be spiritual people who have hopes and dreams that allows us to be successful. So we identify the bad ideas. Second of all, we isolate the bad ideas. Third, we inform people about the bad ideas. At Summit Ministries, our program is different because it's based on a biblical worldview. But we also bring in experts to teach the students about other worldviews so they know what exactly it is they are responding to. And we don't just teach them how to make arguments about things, we teach them how to ask good questions. That's what I would encourage you to do with millennials. If you begin making statements to them, that can just be proof to them that you are as obnoxious and reactionary as they thought you are. If, on the other hand, you ask questions, like when somebody makes a grand statement, ask a question like, do you think that's the whole story? It's delightful sometimes as a conservative to realize I am the only open-minded person in a room in the middle of a discussion or debate. That other people are trying to narrow the discussion and I'm trying to broaden it by asking questions like that. We can ask questions like, what do you mean by that? Somebody said to me, there is no God. And I asked, what do you mean by God? And they said, well, you know, the big grandfather figure in the sky who throws lightning bolts down on people. And I said, Zeus? You know, I don't believe in Zeus either. We have something in common. See, it was a place to start the discussion. We ask questions like, how did you arrive at that conclusion? How do you know that your thoughts on this subject are the true ones? So we ask rather than tell. We identify, we isolate, we inform, and then fourth, we invest. When someone you know has the flu or some other kind of a sickness, we don't revile them because they've gotten sick. They couldn't see the viruses. They didn't know they were going to be victimized by them. So we invest in them. And doctors in the physical world will help the people stay hydrated, give them some other medications to give their body a chance to fight back. And that's what we do in the world of ideas as well. We do that through mentoring. We walk alongside life on life with other people. Having a cup of coffee with somebody and asking questions is a more important way to reach the millennial generation than simply giving them another article or paper to read. Does this make sense so far? All right. So we identify, we isolate, we inform, and we invest. We want to help you at Summit Ministries. If you come to the Summit booth, which is in the book hall where the book table is, go to the book table, turn right. You'll see the Summit Ministries booth there. You can sign up with your information on your card and win an iPad and gift cards and some other gifts there. But you can also find out how Summit Ministries can help the millennials you know and love, your children, grandchildren, neighbors, young people from your church, and also through the new Secret Battle of Ideas project, help your entire church or your small group when they're hungry to know the truth and figure out how we can take a stand for that truth for such a time as this. Thank you so much for your attendance here today, and God bless you.